today's video, I'm going to be showing you my third Encanto themed design. So the first one I did was Mirabel, the second one was Bruno, and this one is going to be Luisa. And I absolutely love that Luisa is the character that so many kids and people are gravitating towards, even though they thought it would be Isabella, just because she's the strong one. She's like the atypical character. And it cracks me up that Disney did all the Isabella merchandise, and then Luisa's the one that was so sought after. I love those things. I think they are such a fun little tidbit. I hope you guys like them as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
So we are going to begin with an ombre in the background that is just shades of blue, just a darker blue and then a lighter blue, gently swirling them together. Nothing too crazy. I'm not going to do quite as much in the background as I did for Mirabel or for Bruno. I'm going to keep it a little more simple for Luisa. She has a little bit less of a, I don't know, flamboyant personality per se. So we're going to just do those blues, and then I'm going to add the glitter. I added the glitter in the background of the other two. So in order to keep with the continuity, we're going to be adding just a touch of it in the background for Luisa as well. And then encapsulate the nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure it is nice and strong, protect that glitter, and make sure that those swirls stay nice and exactly how I sculpted them and not change the look of them at all. Sometimes when you file over a design like that, it really messes up the final result. If you have the swirl on top and you go to file it, it can kind of just change the way the whole thing looks. So then we're going to go through and file it into shape with an e-file, make sure that it's nice and smooth, apex is in place, etc., etc. Once that is done, now we can go through and we can start sculpting Luisa's face. So I'm going to take a tan shade of acrylic and I'm going to be just doing kind of a basic shape of her face. I'm not going to necessarily be sculpting up any of her facial features like mouth, nose, eye area, any of those things, cheekbones. I'm just really trying to get that outside shape done. Once I have that in place, then I like to later go through and build up those other more important details. After I have that done, I'm going to be sculpting her neck and then her shoulders. Remember that because she is the strong one, that she has a much wider neck in comparison to both Bruno and Mirabel. They both have a little bit more of a thinner structure to them than Luisa does. So then after we have her neck done, and just a little bit down, so a little bit out of her shoulders and a little bit down her chest, not very far. She doesn't have like her shoulders shown at all or her chest shown at all, but you do want to just have like a little base there so that whatever does happen to show, you're covered for. And then we're going to be doing the top of her dress with white. As you're sculpting the white dress, I'm not going to be like extending her arms out past it all, but you might just want to kind of flare out the sides for her arms just a little bit. You don't have to overdo it. There isn't a whole lot of her that is showing much, like besides her face. With Mirabel, I sculpted in her arms and I did more of her, like the top part of her dress with a little bit of the embroidery. Not as much is going to be shown with Luisa. I didn't necessarily, with Mirabel, I wanted the background to show because the background was so pretty. I don't have that urge necessarily with Luisa. I think her face and like the strength in her face is the thing that really needs to shine through on this one. So after we have that done, then I'm going to go back through and I'm going to start building up her facial features. I'm going to do her nose and add some more to her forehead, build up some strength in her forehead, add some, more definition to her brow bone than you probably did with, say, Mirabel if you are sculpting along with me. And then we're going to be adding her eyes with white acrylic. A lot of these details, you can either sculpt them like I did with acrylic, or you can go through and you can just add them with paint later. It is a personal preference. More and more, I'm finding that I like to sculpt in as much as possible and just reserve the last little bit of painting for the final touches on the end. But, it is personal preference. A couple years ago, I would have been saying the opposite, saying that I like to to paint as much and just sculpt what needs to be and then finish everything off with paint. So it is completely sort of a either where you are in your development as a nail artist, or it's just personal preference. And either way, it works out. And the results, for the most part, are very similar either way. So as you're sculpting this in, one thing that I always go back and forth on whether or not I want to sculpt in are the lips of a character, especially if they're closed-mouthed. Whenever I do it and I sculpt in their lips, I always use just the same color that I used for their skin, and then I add paint to them later. So it's almost like I'm painting them in, but I do sculpt them in just to give a little bit of that texture. For Luisa, I'm going to be sculpting in her eyebrows with brown. I'm going to add just a little bit of black around her eyes. These particular things like the eyebrows and the eyelashes are definitely something that could have been done with paint instead, if that's what's easier for you. And as you're working on things, if you've never tried it one way or the other, like if you've always done it the way that I'm showing you right now, where you've done as much as you can with acrylic and barely painted, try it with paint, just acrylic craft paint, and see if that works better for you, because you never really know until you give something a try, and vice versa. If you've always just painted things and you've never tried to do it with acrylic, I honestly always thought that doing something like those eyelashes would be almost impossible with acrylic because, it's harder to get like skinny little lines. But when you're going right around a shape with acrylic, I actually find it to be much easier than trying to paint around the shape. You can kind of manipulate things a little bit more. And so maybe, if you haven't ever tried it and it's just like a thought that would be more difficult, give it a try just to see what might happen, and maybe it'll be easier than you think. And like with anything else, you never really know until you try. I keep telling Melody that about trying food, and she doesn't listen to me. No, she's a pretty good eater, but we're going to add a couple curls coming down Luisa's face with the same brown, just a few little wispy curls. I'm going to just do a little bit more adjusting on her face shape. As I was looking at it, I decided it just wasn't quite right, so I'm going to be adding a little bit more of that tan color, and I'm going to be strengthening her jawline. Add a little bit of more of her hair coming down the far side, the side away from her bun. And then I'm going to be adding the ear that's going to show on the side with the bun. Her face is tipped just a little bit to the side, so you see one ear and not the other. At least for the most part, the other ear is a little bit smaller and kind of off to the side. Once you're done with all of that acrylic sculpting madness, then you can go through and with acrylic paint, detail it. Like I've said, depending on what you've detailed with acrylic, this is either going to be a very important, very tedious step where you add in so many details and so many important things, or maybe it'll be a really quick thing where you just do a couple little outlines here and there. Depends. If you wanted to, you could have even done like the color in her eyes and her pupils with acrylic. That's something that I don't think I'll ever do because I don't want to build up the height on the eye. I want to keep it really flat, which the paint does. But, depending on how you do it, it would work. So we're just going to keep going through, adding any details that seems like they're necessary, detailing her dress a little bit, adding the bow in her hair. I love that little bow is added to her hair. I think that is one of the best details of her character. It just adds that little feminine touch that I think she needs, or that as a person that she feels like she needs. So I think that little bow is just like the last perfect thing to add to her. And I think that was a fantastic choice of the creators of this movie. We're going to be detailing her lips, adding some little outlines around her face, doing some diluted brown to add some shading and some warmth to her face. A little bit of color in her ear. Once you're done painting, apply a layer of gel top coat over the background, some matte top coat over Luisa, and then this nail is all done. I absolutely just love this whole series. I love the characters from this movie. I think they're so well developed, and there's so much going on, and so much of their personality and their backstory just from the couple hours that you get to see them in the movie. So I hope you guys like this one as much as I do. If you missed any of my past Encanto designs, I will put links to them below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!